The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a platform and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co. Daniel Priestley. Daniel started as an entrepreneur at the age of 21 and built a multi-million-dollar event marketing and management business before the age of 25. A successful entrepreneur, international speaker, and best-selling author, Daniel has built and sold businesses in Australia, Singapore, and the UK. Daniel is the founder of Dent, which runs a 9-month growth accelerator program for small enterprises, working with over 500 plus entrepreneurs each year to develop their business. Dent has offices in the UK, USA, Singapore, and Australia. Daniel uses campaigns to help raise $100,000 for charity each year and is connected to some of the world's most known and celebrated entrepreneurs and leaders. With a passion for global small business, Daniel is the author of the best-selling books Key Person of Influence, Entrepreneur, Revolution, Oversubscribed, and 24 Assets. My work with Daniel. Well, I've had the opportunity to know of Daniel for quite a few years. I've read his books. I've read Oversubscribed and Revolution quite a few years ago. And I had the pleasure of him speaking at the Best You Expo a few years ago. He's a true professional. He's shared the stage with many great people and extremely knowledgeable in what he does and what he says. So enjoy. Thank you so much. Hi, and welcome. I'm Bernardo Moya, and welcome to Inspiring People. Today, I've got the pleasure of interviewing Daniel Priestley, who's an entrepreneur, author, and international speaker. Hi, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's a lot of pressure with the name like Inspiring People. I've got to come up with some inspiring stuff.
I'm sure you'll come up with loads of stuff. Just let's start with your early years. Tell me where you're from and kind of like what was school like for you.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm Australian. I grew up, I was born in a place called Geelong. Grew up in a place called the Sunshine Coast, which is actually a real place, a real name. Not just the kind of name that you'd imagine Australia has, but it was actually endless beaches, lots of sun, lots of surfing, lots of skiing and those sorts of things. So I grew up in a very much a beachside community. Mum was a local politician, Dad was a school teacher, Mum was a writer for the local newspaper. I had a good time at school. But it was a strange experience given the fact that I was in a massive school. We had something like 2,000 students. Each classroom was about 40 kids. So, the kids kind of ruled the roost more than the teachers. I had my first entrepreneurial experience very young. I was 10 years old. Mum set fire to the kitchen and damaged all sorts of things accidentally. And they were going to throw them all out, but I negotiated with them that I would have the right to sell them in a garage sale. And at 10 years old, I put an ad in the paper. I cleaned all this stuff up, put it on tables, and got it all ready for selling, and then went around to all the neighbours and did 50-50 joint ventures with them to sell their stuff in my garage sale. So I had a bit of an interesting sort of early entrepreneur experience there.
Any subjects in particular you stood out or you enjoyed?
For school, yeah. I loved film and television, so I loved being around all of this studio sort of setting. Had a great time doing film and television. Loved economics. Was very fascinated by economics, micro and macroeconomics. Legal studies, I enjoyed legal. And probably mainly because I actually knew from about 14 that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be in business. So I was quite happy learning about anything in my head that linked to entrepreneurship and the world of entrepreneurship. I was happy to learn about it. I was working at McDonald's And the same thing, I felt that was part of my entrepreneurial journey. I was learning systems and procedures and structure and business at McDonald's, and I was learning all those sort of topics during school.
Was there anybody in particular that inspired you in your early years or influenced you?
So pretty early on, I was up early, probably at about 10 or 11 years old, watching the music TV show. And on came TV a guy called Tony Robbins with an infomercial. And he was this big, loud American with lots of people talking about how they were super successful. And I remember going halves with my dad to try and buy these tapes or these CDs. So I did Personal Power, the 30 Days Personal Power, when I was probably 12 years old. Okay. Discovered the book The E-Myth when I was about 15 with Michael Gerber, and recently I got the chance to speak on stage with Michael Gerber. I've had the chance to meet Tony Robbins. So there was sort of, a few of those sorts of people. There were family friends. There was a family friend who was doing really well in business, and he was talking about how his businesses were very much what he did, and he could be anywhere in the world and the business would still be going. And I was very impressed by that idea. And then there was the owner of my McDonald's, a guy called Randy, who had 6 McDonald's's. And he, sort of explained how being a McDonald's owner was a great thing. So I had a few of those kind of inspiring people around.
So after school, what happened then? What did you study?
So I went to business school, university, and I was really excited to launch into my next step in business. I was pretty profoundly disappointed. I remember speaking to each of the lecturers. I don't know where I got it in my head, but I thought that I had thought that in university, the people teaching a business degree would be people who own a big successful company, and in their spare time they come in and teach university. I don't know where I got that idea. I think because I'd heard, of Steve Jobs going and lecturing at, Harvard or something like that, that I thought I'd be coming in contact on a regular basis with sort of industry leaders and business people. And piece by piece, I went through each of my subjects and found that every single one of my business lecturers had never run a business, never owned a business, never started a business. They'd mainly either had a career in the world in academics, or maybe they'd been in a consulting firm or a Big Four accounting firm, but none of them had actually been entrepreneurs. So, that was a bit disappointing. One thing that was a positive experience from all of that was that I was given an assignment to try and come up with an idea and to put together a business plan. And the idea that I came up with was to run a dance party for 15 to 17-year-olds. You had to find a unmet need. And I just looked on the street that I lived in and found all these 15 to 17-year-olds who were too old to do kid stuff and too young to do adult stuff. And I thought, 15 to 17, there's an unmet need for entertainment. And I wrote about it. And then the more I wrote about it, I thought, I'm just going to do this. So myself and my friend, we called up a nightclub and we organised a school holiday dance party. And we ended up with like 1,000 kids at $10 a head. Making, all the costs were covered. We had radio sponsors and retail sponsors. And that was one of my first kind of like, out there in the real world business opportunities. I ran 6 parties all up, and got great experience from that. But then I also made the decision to drop out after my first year in university and to just focus full time on working under the wing of entrepreneurs.
You had a mentor in your early years, didn't you?
Yeah.
Your first, tell me a little bit. Was Mike?
Mike Harris was a mentor much later.
Oh, much later. Okay.
When I was here in London. But in the early days, I worked very closely with a guy called John, and John was one of Australia's sort of more cutting edge kind of marketers, very much into direct marketing, direct selling. And was working with, half a dozen different products. And I got the chance to work out of his beach home in Noosa in Australia. And he had this beautiful big, I wouldn't be over-exaggerating to call it a mansion. It was a beautiful big home, architecturally designed, beautiful place that we all worked out of. There's about 6 of us, and we worked out of the home, and we travelled around Australia, marketing things, selling things, and I worked very closely with him for those couple of years. So I worked with him directly for 2 years, learning about sales and marketing, and then so that was 19 to 21, and then at 21, 22, I thought I'm going to go and start my own business. So I launched my first company when I was 22.
And this was when you decided to carry on down the route of event management.
Yeah, so it was essentially event management and event marketing. Mm-hmm. That was my first company called Triumphant Events. Mm-hmm. And what we looked for any products or services that were high ticket, so thousands of dollars to purchase, and that would actually do well with a good explanation or a good presentation, where we could run live events and live event road shows. We could present, have an expert speaker and a panel and, brochures and actually capture a bit of attention. And we'd put on road shows where the typical road show, we'd have audiences of maybe, 100 to 200 people. We'd have some expert speakers, and we'd have different products available, often in financial services, franchising, business services, and just things that, tend to benefit from that launch campaigning approach. So we would run those marketing campaigns and promotions up and down the east coast of Australia. So it went very well. 22 to 23, we did about $1 million worth of sales, had lots of money in the bank, ran it out of a 4-story townhouse, bought great cars. I thought to myself, business is so easy. Why doesn't everyone do this? Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. Continued to grow, took on more and more contracts, took on a really big contract, and ended up growing the business to a national business by the time we were 25, and ended up with a national business, generating sales of $10 million plus. So that was one of those kind of very quick ramp up businesses. I think we had a team of about 25, 30 people at the time.
And sucking a lot of information and learning from loads of people, which is great.
Learning from lots of people, learning from lots of experiments. We were very good at tracking and measuring. We were really good at, a lot of the learnings from that business was actually about newspaper advertising. So at one point we were spending $250,000 a month on newspaper ads. We learned how to do the whole advertising model just right before it became redundant, and got replaced by Facebook. But yeah, we learned a lot about the whole how do you generate interest and enthusiasm through direct advertising.
Did you move down a completely different route, down entrepreneurship and training?
No, well, I built this business. We were doing the national campaigns. We put most of our eggs into one basket with one particular company, and then we had a pretty colossal falling out with that company. And we had to scale right back down. We scaled the business down to a couple of $1 million. But also the 3 main people in the business, myself and 2 good friends, we also realised that we hadn't travelled. We hadn't we'd just been working working really solidly. So we ran in the year before this, we ran 174 events in 12 months. Each one on average with a couple of hundred people. Like it was pretty much every second day. And you can imagine the workload and packing up, setting down and all that sort of stuff. So we decided, what if we could take some time out, travel, maybe go and, see the world. I got an opportunity to do a launch marketing campaign for someone in London. So I thought, what, I'm just going to go and live in London for a year or two and do some event marketing over there. Launch Triumphant Events UK and see how we go. So that was 9 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
And I was going to ask you, is England home now for you?
Yeah, London's home. That business evolved, morphed. We ended up 5 years ago building one of the first entrepreneur growth accelerator programs and scaling it. So we We now run a global entrepreneur growth accelerator program. We've got 1,750 companies in Australia, Singapore, UK, USA, a few other places dotted around, focused on 6 and 7 figure businesses and taking them through the various stages of growth.
It is said that we live in a world our questions create. And it's true. Those that have succeeded in life, those that stand out, those that have made a difference, those that are inventing, those that are exploring, pushing the boundaries of reality are based on those that have asked themselves empowering questions. In my new book, The Question, Find Your True Purpose, I help you find your true purpose, find your legacy. For more information, go to www.thequestion.co. If you're interested in working with me, contributing to the magazine, maybe speaking at any of our many events around the world, partnering or licensing The Best You, go to www.thebestyou.co. With a lot of people that I've interviewed over the years, they tend to come across sometimes where there's a turning point in their life or in their career where they go down a completely different journey or route. Is this something that's happened to you?
Well, there was a bit of a turning point when, in 2009, a very, Triumphant Events UK did really well for a couple of years. We built it up to several £1 million in sales, and then in 2009, when the recession hit, the revenue dropped by about 80 to 90%, and nothing we could do could stop it. We tried every trick in the book, but people just didn't want to buy, and just didn't want to do what we did. So that was a great time of rethinking and reimagining the business and sort of re-looking at life and all of that. I suppose up until that point, I'd always been focused on trying to find someone else who would be the valuable person in the business, and we would have expert speakers and marketing people, and we'd bring in professional speakers and authors. And then it was around that time that I thought, you know what, I actually know what I'm looking for when I want someone to be a key person of influence at an event. I'm going to fill those shoes. I'm going to write my own book, create my own content, tell my story. Up until that point, I'd never really shared much of what I had going on. I was always sort of bringing big international people to London, or finding authors and all that. And I said, actually, you know what? I'm going to position myself as a key person of influence. And that's that was the beginning of a very different journey.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people will probably find that as well, that maybe they're working with someone, or they've read all this content and they've attended all these seminars, but they still haven't decided to take that step forward and say, it's my time now.
And people always say to me, can you recommend a book I should read? And I say, no, but I recommend a book you should write. I really think the book that's most transformational is not the one that you read, it's one you write. It's because there is that gear shift of saying, actually, I'm going to be in the author's seat. I'm going to share something of value. And I think that is a mental shift that you make when you stop trying to consume the value and start to create it and be the source of it. And that fundamentally is a bit of a shift.
And with your expertise, you went down the entrepreneurship and about obviously helping or creating new entrepreneurs around the world.
Yeah. So mostly our clients are already doing quite well. We work with good, solid 6 and 7 figure businesses. A lot of them have already gotten past that proof of concept phase. A lot of them are earning good money from their business. But it doesn't really matter if you're already successful. Most people want to achieve a new level or impact more people. So we tend to work with people who have got into that sort of 6 figure to 7 figure bracket, sometimes 7 figure businesses, and develop them to that next stage. And along the way, we've had the opportunity to take some stakes in those businesses. Some of them have done very, very well. We've been able to see the whole growth journey. When you're in your own business, you tend to only see the problems that are hitting your business, and you only see the problems that are hitting your stage in business. Whereas when you work in a growth accelerator environment, you got 1,700 companies across the world, and you see all the problems hitting all the businesses, and you see that it's really predictable that certain problems happen at a certain stage of business, and then they evolve into these new problems, and they evolve into these new problems. So you know what's coming. You know how to get around some of the problems. So you get a different perspective.
And how do you help them? What's that journey of those 9 months where you take them through a process? What is it?
Yeah, so there's 5 key modules that we take people through in order to help them grow. So number 1 is the ability for them and their team to pitch the business effectively. So in a social pitching environment or a scheduled pitching environment, people need to be able to pitch their business with clarity and authority and be able to articulate the problem that they solve and those sorts of things that are important in a pitching scenario. We talk about published content or intellectual property. So every business really needs to be looking at what published content sits around the business and then pushing themselves to write about their industry and write about their clients so that they're finding and discovering intellectual property and insights. We then try and take those insights that the owner or the business has, turn them into new products. So most businesses are under-productized, so they're focused on 1 or 2 products, and they need to really develop 4 products at least. And normally businesses take off when they've hit the 4th product. And then raising the profile for the owner from a key person of influence in their business to a key person of influence in their industry. And then working on developing partnerships. So, you know, a lot of businesses move at the same speed as the partners that they have. So if they're partnering with fast growth companies, they become a fast growth company. If they're partnering with big companies, they become more stable, more solid and bigger. If they partner with celebrities, they get a celebrity halo effect around the business. So if you can partner with the types of companies that you'd like to move at their same speed, you know, then that's a powerful way to build a business. So we focus on those things: pitching, publishing, products, profile, partnerships, which of course we call the 5 Ps.
I've recently read your book Oversubscribed, which I thought was great.
Thank you.
What can one learn from that book? What are your insights on kind of what people should take from it?
Yeah, so I wrote the book Oversubscribed because I sort of was confused as to why in a digital world people would line up for a restaurant or line up for a brand, given the fact that you can find alternatives very quickly by looking on your phone. Because transparency of price is such an easy thing to look at now, I was curious, why are some people willing to pay a premium for a product? And I really, just for 2 years, took notes on any business I could find that had a waiting list, a lineup, a physical lineup, a virtual lineup, or was charging some sort of a premium price. And I discovered a lot of stuff about what people can learn from those sorts of businesses. So, you know, we learnt that they're very good at campaigning. So those businesses, they don't just sort of show up the normal way that most businesses show up. They run campaigns and they're successful at doing staged releases of their products, for example. They're very good at creating desire. They sell to wants, not needs. They communicate and make the buyer the celebrity. They don't make the prospect the celebrity. So most businesses are celebrating the prospect or the lead and then forgetting people who have bought. Oversubscribed businesses champion and celebrate the people who are already their customers really well. So there's a lot of those sorts of things. I suppose the overarching theme of the book is that unless you're oversubscribed, you're going to either break even or lose money. So unless you can maintain the balance where, you know, your capacity to deliver a remarkable result is exceeded by the desire of the market, you know, let's say you can take on 100 clients per year and really look after them. If you've got more, you know, 100, 200, 300 people who want to be those clients, then your business does well. As soon as you find yourself in a position where you can look after 100 people a year, but only 80, 60, 70 people want to become a client, well, then you're in trouble. So one of the strategies is to get yourself oversubscribed and then do things that keep you oversubscribed, so you can keep surfing that wave for longer. Yeah, so understanding constraints around capacity is a big part of that, so that you're not, you know, you never want to be able to communicate, oh, we can look after, you know, everyone and those sorts of things. You want to be able to be really deliberate about who you take on and why, and how you protect the experience for the customer and how you communicate that.
Yeah, not be afraid to, you can't market to everyone and keep everyone satisfied all the time.
Yeah, and not be afraid to put some limits out there and say, you know, each month we only onboard 4 clients. That's it. If you don't want to be one of those 4 clients, then you'll have to wait till next month. And if you don't make next month, you'll have to wait till the month after, but we only onboard 4 clients a month. So putting some rules out there that protect your ability to deliver great value.
What does it take to be a good entrepreneur?
It's probably what it takes to be a good tightrope walker. You know, a lot of entrepreneurship is a paradox. There are certain times, you know, where a winning strategy becomes a losing strategy, and certain things that for bigger businesses are a very smart thing to do, and for a smaller business is silly. So, you know, in the same way, a tightrope walker sometimes might lean left and sometimes might lean right. And it's because they're, you know, responding to the environment. An entrepreneur needs to learn how to respond to the environment as well. So there's a set of skills. There are functional skills that every entrepreneur has to have. They have to have, you know, the basic functional skills to run their business. Then there's sort of some of those exciting skills that put a layer of icing on the cake, and they're soft skills. So the skills that we talked about, like pitching ideas and getting published content out there and creating exciting products. You know, it's those soft skills, those innovation skills. One of the very, very common things that almost all entrepreneurs who succeed have is an ability to sell. One of the things I've noticed a lot in the UK is that there's almost a pathological fear of sales, and being seen as a salesperson is almost like, you know, being seen as a bully or a bad person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are very reluctant to enter into anything that looks like a sales conversation. They overcompensate and don't sell at all, and to their own detriment a lot of the time, because a lot of getting a business going requires you to be able to sell or at least recruit someone who can sell. There's probably an element of delayed gratification as well. You know, for an entrepreneur, you have a vision. That vision lights you up, but that vision might, you know, take 5 or 6 years to bring into the world. And as soon as you're there, because you're a visionary type of person, you probably move the goalposts on yourself. You know, at one point you thought that having £1 million revenue would be the answer to all of life's problems, and then you get there and you realise the number's 10, and you get there to realise the number is probably 100.
Guilty.
and you keep moving the goalposts on yourself, which is probably a little bit of the nature of the animal.
I mean, I've also kind of, like, in your book and obviously profiling and looking at what you've done, also obviously have a great team. You obviously have a great team around you, but also you surround yourself with key people of influence, aren't you? And
yeah, so that's a great point. And the term entrepreneur conjures up, you know, a single person like a Richard Branson or an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs. And in reality, the term entrepreneur is very misleading, because in order for someone to stand out as an entrepreneur, they're always backed by a great team. So there's something like 40 to 50 people on my team at the moment who right now all over the world are doing wonderful things, allowing me to sit here and be in the spotlight. So entrepreneurship is probably more of a realistic term. That entrepreneurship is an energy you bring into a team that is permission to innovate, permission to make mistakes, permission to try new things, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. So entrepreneurship is an energy shared by an entrepreneurial team, and I think that's more the reality of what entrepreneur, what the entrepreneur journey is about. In many ways, people who don't have a team are self-employed. Mm-hmm. They're employed. They're the boss and the employee. And I used to work for a boss. Now I work for a psychopath. Is the thing that they often say. The other one that I find is a misleading term, or a fairly pointless term, is the term founder or co-founder. It's 5.25 million businesses in the UK, so anyone can found a business. It's not that hard to go and set up a company and register a company and pay the £100 or whatever it is to launch a business. The very difficult part is the scaling. So taking a business from 0 to £1 million is not that hard, but taking a business from 1 to 10 is a bit difficult. It's you really have to develop assets that didn't exist in the world. You have to, get creative, again and again and again. Effectively, you have to go through that £1 million journey 10 times. So, when we interview a lot of entrepreneurs who have quote unquote made it, they rarely, a lot of people want to know about the first million, but when you sort of get behind the scenes with them, they'll talk about, most of the pain and struggle was around that £1 to £10 million journey. Once you hit £10 million or even slightly less, you end up with a business that is a high-performing business. You've got a team, you've got you've got revenue, you've got people willing to lend to you. So it takes on a bit of a life of its own. Once it hits that higher level, and you can afford to make a few mistakes, and you can afford to, hire a few people to innovate. But the 1 to 10 million, things are very difficult, very tight. Culture is going to shift radically from a small band of boutique lifestyle, friends, to a high performance business that that's making big things happen in the world, doing £1 million a month sometimes. So that scaling journey should probably get a little bit more attention on it, as opposed to the term founder or co-founder that everyone wants to know. Who's the founder? Who's the co-founder? It's like, actually, you should be asking the question, who came along and helped it scale?
Good point. To find out more about our latest projects, get a free coaching lesson, or download my book, go to www.bernardo-moya.com. What would you say your best assets are?
I think my best asset, if I've got any, is a self-awareness that I'm not very good at much. I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back is the idea that they're the best person to be doing something. And I think if I'm lucky, I didn't pick up that quality. I'm more than happy for anyone else to come along and outshine, outperform. If someone wants to come along and be a better salesperson than I am, great. If someone wants to come along and be a better speaker than I am, great. If someone wants to write an article on our website, great. So I'm, if I have any quality whatsoever, it's probably stepping out of the way and letting better people come along and play a role. But I don't have any particular. I'm yet to figure out what my major strength is. If there's anything, it's just letting people perform.
Not a bad one to have.
And slightly linked to that would be recruitment. I'm good at spotting talented individuals and trying to find ways to help them develop. So I'm probably good at recruiting and not training myself, but helping people get developed.
The economy's moving, changing, but kind of looking at people that just been made redundant, or people that are coming out of the uni. Are they or aren't they entrepreneurial? What do you think the best assets are, and what would you think are kind of like the essentials in order to be able to, live a life where you can leave a legacy?
Well, leaving a legacy, I don't know a lot about that.
It could be having children. It could be
some people are very driven by legacy. It's not something that drives me a lot. I hope that my ancestors are thinking about the future, not the past. But not my ancestors, my opposite of that.
Yeah.
Look, if someone's coming out of university and unable to find a job, the first thing I'd say is go. A lot of people coming out of university, they think of big companies as the best employers, and quite often there's great small businesses on every block of the street who would absolutely love to have an apprentice. They might not be able to pay you as well, but hey, 3 to 6 months working in a small business is going to give you a really great top-level view of business, because in one room you're going to see sales, you're going to see marketing and lead generation, you're going to see client delivery. Whereas if you go and work for some giant company, the sales are made in India, the software is developed in Ireland, management team is in New York, and the little division that you're working in happens to be here in London. But you don't get a very top level view of the place. So in many regards, I would say go and throw yourself at a small business and find a way to get involved in a small business that excites you. Go find a team of 3 or 4 people and go and help them. And they'll, if you can create some value, they'll figure out how to pay you. Maybe not as much as a blue chip, but certainly something. And that's a good place to start. If you're hell-bent on starting a business, then I'm a big fan of the idea that you don't do it alone, that you start with a team of 3, have someone who's in sales and marketing, have someone who's in operations, have someone who's a bit of a jack of all trades. See if you can rope in a web developer or a graphic designer, but rope together 3 or 4 people before you go out there and launch something, and see if you can keep having discussions. Statistically, a 1-person business does 55,000 revenue. That's the average. And a 3-person business in the same industry statistically does £270,000. So revenue per person jumps from 55 grand to 90,000 if you just work together as a team of 3. So there's more money going around if you can get 3 people sitting around the table. With 3 people, you don't need an office. You don't need anything really. It's just you need an agreement that you're going to work together, and you're going to focus. You're not going to all duplicate. One of you will focus on sales and the other one will focus on looking after clients. Those kind of conversations have to happen. In the same way, if you're going to go and rob a bank, you need to know who's the getaway driver and who's cracking the safe, and all work together. But you're going to have a more shot of success if you do that than trying to go and run in and do it all yourself. So I'm a big fan of entrepreneur teams, get them together. And I'm a big fan of not necessarily starting a business as the first thing you do. I personally, I got more value from the 2 years I did with John than I possibly could have gotten from any book or any startup that I was part of. Working under the wing of someone who was successful was just invaluable.
And be patient, I suppose. A lot of people expect to come in, set up a business and start earning millions within. Yeah,
so the thing about business is that if you get it right, the sky is the limit. So you also have to acknowledge that, because of that, the starting point might be very low, but if you get it right, you'll have plenty of room to grow. Conversely, you could get a job, let's say in a law firm, working as a lawyer, and there's a very predictable format for that. You go and do certain courses, you go and get your internship, and then you go and become a junior and you work your way up the thing, and you kind of predictably know where you're going to be for the next 15, 20 years on that path. The entrepreneurial path is a bit more adventurous, a bit more out of the box. Anything could happen. The sky is the limit in many regards, but you have to acknowledge that perhaps you're going to have to start on a lower rung. But there's plenty of the world's wealthiest people who have started sweeping the floors.
That's great advice. I think also kind of based on what you've just said and obviously how so many people have helped you and influenced you over the years, I think maybe some advice on mentorship, because I know it's a very important part of what you do. What's your thoughts regarding how people could go out there and find a mentor?
Well, for starters, I'd like to speak to anyone who is further along in the business journey, and I'd say one of the best things you'll do for selfish reasons and one of the best things you'll do for your own good is to mentor someone. When you have to slow down and explain what you do and how you do it, that's where you get pretty deep insights for yourself and where you start to go through a little bit of examining the logic. So, if I was talking to someone who is a CEO of a company, or if I was talking to someone who's, running a 7-figure business, I'd say one of the best personal development journeys you could possibly go on for yourself, or business development journeys you could go on for yourself, is to take on someone that you mentor, because it's just going to make you examine the way you do things. My best ideas come not from when I'm learning from others, but when I'm having to teach, when I'm having to explain, when I'm having to talk through, the other day I met with this young university student, and he was just hammering me with questions. And it was like, when a little kid says, why is the sky blue? And why do dogs have 4 legs and birds only have 2 legs? And you're sitting there going, I don't know why. But he was asking me all these questions, and I had to slow it right down and think it through. And I was getting some really great insights for myself that I immediately went back to the team and spoke about. But it was because I had to go through the process of unexamined logic. For someone who wants a mentor, probably the worst way to approach it is to go up and say, would you be my mentor, to someone who's quite clearly going to get asked that a lot. So going to a business seminar and talking to a professional speaker who speaks in front of audiences every week or every month would be, they're going to essentially say, this is what I do. I teach business and I talk about business all the time. And every time I give a talk, there's 16 people asking for me to mentor them. So the answer is going to be no. Going to the local graphic designer who's got 6 or 7 guys working in his office, and who's been in business for a little while and who's maybe turning over 500-600 grand, is not doing public speaking or any of those sorts of things, and saying, look, I one day want to own a business as well. Is there anything I can help you with where in the process of helping you, I would be able to learn something? I'm happy to sweep floors. I'm happy to clean stuff. I'm happy to drive you to the airport. I'm happy to, sit in on meetings and take notes for you. I'm happy to, read reports and distill information for you. I'm happy to do any of those sorts of things if you think it would help me to learn a bit about business. And that would be one way to start. And the other one would be, can I, I'm starting a business. I respect you. I admire you. If there's ever a time where you would otherwise be eating alone or driving alone, could I drive you or buy you lunch in exchange for being able to ask you 2 or 3 questions that I think you'd have a better perspective on than I would have? And that tends to start the relationship. And then the other thing too is, rather than saying, will you be my mentor, open-ended, could I buy you lunch, 45 minutes of your time, one time, just ask you 2 or 3 questions and buy you lunch. And in exchange, if there's something else I can, if you think there's something I could help you with, I'd be more than happy to help you do that.
You were just saying that, for example, kind of when you were questioned, and you tend to understand that you obviously know a lot more when you teach. Now, over the years, we've obviously read loads of books and attended many seminars. And I think that's kind of the idea of the best doing what we do, is just being able to hopefully provide and create content for everyone everywhere. And I think that's part of the process. I think that people who are looking to move forward in life, in whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, there's so much out there, isn't there? There's so much out there in so many different formats, and from free to whatever it is, and even books. There's so much material out there, and I think part of what you have managed to achieve, obviously over the years, is based on that. Is permanently educating and learning yourself.
Yeah, so a lot of the time I create that stuff not really for the audience, but for myself. So when I write books, I write because I want to get the ideas down, and I want to learn. And the fact that anyone else is going to read it is a bit of a bonus. I genuinely didn't really expect many people to read any of my books. They turned out that, we got a little bit of traction with the books, but and that's nice. But I talk about writing as a bit of a mining process. That if you imagine that your job is to find gold, you've got to go and dig. And if your job is to find IP, intellectual property, and insights, then you have to sit down and write. And it's through the writing process that you come up with some really great ideas.
And my last question, I'm not going to be asking about your legacy, but many, many years from now, where do you see you evolving and moving towards? For me,
the thing that, in my career context and business context, the thing that inspires me most is, number one, that we live in really remarkable times, absolutely transformational times. And it's not lost on me that every day I wake up and I think, why was I born in this time? I mean, I could have been born in the industrial age and I would have been a factory worker. I could have been born in the agricultural age and I probably would have ended up being a farmhand. I could have been born in the dark ages and I would have been a serf on somebody's farm, or torn apart by the Spanish Inquisition for my horrible, questioning mind that I have. But for some strange reason, I was born in this time where anyone can come up with an idea and scale it globally. You can create a conversation and find a market internationally. You can sell a product into anywhere in the world. You can find an idea no matter where it is. You can access an expert. The world's completely transforming, and I'm right here at the right time to be part of that. So for me, I'm not trying to really get anywhere, just enjoying surfing that wave. Every time I make big plans, life shows up as way better than my plans. And I like being open to seeing what shows up. So, I mean, at the moment, we're building a global business. We're opening new cities. We're launching new products. We're doing more with all of our clients. We're doing a couple of acquisitions, buying great businesses, and I'm involved in identifying great companies and being in a position to buy them and acquire them into the group. But it's not necessarily because I'm trying to get anywhere. It's just because I just wake up and get excited by the fact that I cannot believe how lucky I am to be born in the right time at the right place when the whole thing turned magical. And the whole world is just one big magical place at the moment. Just blows my mind. But as far as anything like being remembered or being having a legacy, I don't believe in it. I don't really want to be remembered. I would like people to be focused on their future, not on anyone in the past. Even my grandchildren, I'd rather them focused on their life, not on my life. And I also don't really believe in legacy because I think life is more of a rich tapestry than anything else. There are people who because of a small gesture that they did for me, totally changed the way my life has turned out. They're not going to be remembered as part of my story or be known as part of my story. So therefore my story is not true. It's not real. I would be taking credit for a lot of other people's hard work if I was remembered as someone bright and shiny. So I'm really far more interested in honouring the tapestry as opposed to anyone who stands out as a bright shiny bead.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
There we go.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for watching Inspiring People. Thank you. Thank you. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.